All right, let's bring in Kevin Green, senior markets correspondent, to help set up some of the other action today. We're watching some moves with the automakers. You're seeing some pressure, especially on GM, down about 6%. You see some pressure on Stellantis, but Ford is managing to shake it off. So let's go big picture here and tell us where we stand with regard to tariffs. It's clear that the president is focusing on autos with this latest announcement, but tell us kind of the headlines here first before we dig into some of the impact.
Yeah, from a headline standpoint, we did see yesterday after the market closed that President Trump did impose a 25% tariffs on all imported vehicles coming into the United States here. Now, this is actually going to start and take effect on April 3rd instead of April 2nd. But there are also the market's really trying to figure out the parts side of the equation. Apparently, the parts tariffs will begin on May 3rd, but it does appear, just based on the orders and based on some of the commentary from the White House and some other sources here, that it's not really clear how they are going to be taxed as far as the parts. Now, President Trump did make a mention that they will be checking the ports and making sure that the parts that are being put into these vehicles are U.S. made in order to avoid the tariffs. And if not, obviously that's going to have an impact when it comes to the pricing here. And industry experts are expecting around a $3,000 to $6,000 increase per vehicle because of these tariffs, and also looking at production to come down pretty substantially. This is, the market is expecting around 20,000 vehicles less per day here, around a 30% production drop because of these tariffs. Now, obviously, he is pushing for seeing some more onshoring of some of these manufacturing facilities, but that can be a little bit difficult in a very short timeline. So the market obviously is kind of a little bit, you can see autos obviously getting hit a little bit. If you look at the European markets, they also got hit because of these tariffs here. But I think the further clarity, Diane, on the parts is going to be very, very key, because some of these parts can move back and forth across borders 5, 6, or even 7 times. And if they're getting tariffed each and every time, then obviously a lot of these estimates are going to be a lot higher than probably what we perceive right now.
So I wonder if, Stellantis obviously getting hit, but GM getting hit even harder in the pre-market. Does that have to do with the parts or how much of their production happens overseas, especially, say, compared to Ford?
Yeah, I would say it definitely has to do with the parts, and then also GM does have a substantial amount of operations in Mexico, and so that makes it a little bit difficult. So we have seen a little bit of a reprieve before with the USMCA, those that were in compliance, but now that's also going to be removed as far as those protections. So you are seeing GM getting hit down about 6%, Stellantis down about 1.4%, but obviously if you kind of look at the stock chart, it has been doing that great. And then for Ford, they're still going to have the same issues as GM, but maybe not as much exposure. And we also do know that Ford has a substantial amount of manufacturing capacity, not only in Detroit, Michigan, but also in Ohio. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But regardless, the big 3 automakers here in the United States will see a meaningful impact when it comes to their sales as well as their production numbers. And it doesn't look like there's going to be any type of resolution. And also during the press conference yesterday, President Trump did make mention that these are going to be permanent throughout his term. It does not appear that he's looking for any type of concessions or to remove these tariffs. I think that was also a little bit of a curveball for the market in general. And Diane, we kind of think about it in that light, are some of these other tariffs that we're going to see on April 2nd, are they going to also be permanent regardless of what actually happens as far as trade deals moving forward?
That is a good question. It is because, sometimes tariffs just continue even beyond, one presidential term. So that is a good question that we don't know the answer to yet. I want to get across one other mover that we're watching outside of the tariff space, completely different story here. GameStop shares under pressure, making some headlines once again. What's the latest here?
Yeah, so GameStop down about 6% in pre-market trading. They did announce or proposed a $1.3 billion convertible note offering here. Now, this offering has not been priced out yet. Once we get kind of closer to that date, they will provide a price, but they are trying to raise capital. And this offering is not going to pay any type of interest on these convertible notes. So 0% interest on the convertible notes. And these convertibles can be transferred or converted into equity or even cash, kind of depending on the settlement of these notes. at the time of expiration, which the notes are going to be due in 2030. So GameStop, this is one of those strategies that they are trying to mirror MicroStrategy, or now called strategy, in order to raise capital in order to buy cryptocurrency assets. So the market's really not appreciating that right now, rightfully so. You're seeing the shares kind of moving to the downside, and we'll see how it reacts when the equity market officially opens here.
Yeah, it's debt to, I guess, get into Bitcoin. We'll see what happens to that. That's a very, it looks like a controversial move there. All right, KG, before you go, I want to get your levels that you're watching today for the S&P 500. We finished at 57.12 yesterday. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so to the upside, looking at 57.50, to the downside, 56.45. Did see obviously some bearish activity towards the latter half of yesterday. If we do have some follow through, we might see some continued pressure, and hopefully initial claims comes in line or even better than the street's expectations. Because if we do see a hot print there, Diane, that's probably where you could see volatility start to spike a little bit more aggressively than what we saw at the end of the day yesterday.
All right. Hopefully, fingers crossed for weekly jobless claims. Those will be coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Thanks a ton. That's Kevin Green, Senior Markets Correspondent. Appreciate you, Kate.